So new information from the Justice Department about last summer's protests in Ferguson, Missouri. The DOJ saying police were uncoordinated and sometimes violated free speech rights, according to documents obtained by NBC News and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Francis back now with a closer look at what this report is really revealing. Francis.
Yeah, this coming out and brings to mind those events that are so clear in our memories. They are in images as well. And Thomas, here are some of the key points from that DOJ report. So let's start with this. The police use of canine units, quote, exacerbated tensions. And how? The DOJ report says that they unnecessarily incited fear and anger among the crowds there. And now in response to the so-called militarization of police, we heard so much about that in the days following. The report said officers wearing defensive and technical equipment should be, quote, staged out of sight during peaceful demonstrations. And then, what about those armored vehicles that we saw? The DOJ said they, quote, should not be visible to protesters except in narrowly defined circumstances, like when shots are fired and in some active shooter situations. And the DOJ also, they weighed in on tear gas, saying it was, quote, deployed without proper warning, without sufficient attention, without consideration, and also when it comes to environmental conditions as well on that. The report also hits at police preparation, saying, quote, officers were not prepared for the volume and severity of personal threats, including against family members as well. So, Thomas, these are just some of the highlights from that report obtained by NBC News, also the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Thomas.
Francis, thank you very much. Appreciate the breakdown. Joining us now, Washington Post reporter Wesley Lowery. He covered last summer's protests and was himself arrested by the Ferguson police. Wesley, good to see you as someone who spent a large amount of time on the ground in Ferguson. Your reaction to this report?
Of course, you know, it's frankly not extremely surprising, although it is a little validating for a lot of the reporters who were down there, as well as I know for a lot of Ferguson residents as well. What we saw was this period of time, this 2-3 week period of time where there are massive demonstrations, massive protests, and a massive police response to that. And so what we're seeing, this is the third DOJ report. The first was about the shooting of Michael Brown. The second was about Ferguson police themselves. And this is about the policing of the protest. All of those arrests, the tear gas, reporters being detained and arrested. This is DOJ's report on that, and what it has found essentially was that the police likely overstepped their constitutional bounds.
Okay, so we are learning the St. Louis Post-Dispatch saying the full report expected to contain about 45 findings, also with recommendations, most importantly for improvement on each point. In addition to that, what other findings do you expect based on your reporting?
Of course, and I can actually confirm that Post-Dispatch report. Before we got on air, I was reading through the 45 on my phone right now. So that is the number of recommendations and specific findings of fault. What I'd expect is a focus on some of the things you've already highlighted, the use of people in sniper positions and having large weapons pointed, especially during daylight, the underutilization of social media and the lack of understanding that this would be a long-term event, not something that would be contained to 1 day or 2 days. But one thing that also stood out to me was this criticism that the Ferguson police and the responding police officers did not initially release information about the shooting, and that drove this story. It led to more media skepticism, led to more questions, and led to more anger in the streets. That was something a lot of us reporters were saying from the very beginning. Things like Darren Wilson's name, which were not released for days upon days, continued to breed this anger in the streets, and that's what the DOJ is going to find in this report.
Meanwhile, as we get a larger meta perspective here, I want to ask you about your database at the Washington Post. Deadly police shootings, 461 shot, dead by police so far this year. So what is this data explaining to you about police shootings in the country?
Of course. I mean, the first thing is how undercounted they are. One thing to point out is that the FBI does put out a number of fatal police shootings, but that number has never been more than 460 for an entire year, going back to 1976. The Washington Post has confirmed 461 fatal shootings in 6 months. And so it means that the number of shootings is double what the feds say it is. So there's that. And then there's also, when you don't have those numbers, you can't do an analysis. I think everyone agrees. Right. Policing groups, activist groups, they want fewer deaths. And you can only get to that if you can do a real analysis of who these people are being killed and what the situations are.
A starting point. Wesley Lowery on the Washington Post, of the Washington Post. Wesley, thanks. Great to see you.